everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Trust Your Board podcast. Steve and Will here to go over waivers for Week 8. Will, how you doing, man?
Steve, I'm doing pretty well, man. How are you?
Pretty good. It was a rough week on my end, fantasy-wise.
Yeah. For update for the listeners, I was able to pull up a big win against Steve as was 5-1 in our league that we're going against each other, and I was 3-3, so trying to stay in the pole position for playoffs. But Steve had a nice little lead there, so you could probably afford a loss if you had to.
Yeah, for sure. And it was there was a lot of back and forth. As we said last week, you were projected to win by like 10. After the first set of games, I think I was projected to win by 10 or 15.
Yeah, it looked like I was almost rolling it out once we got into the 4:00 games.
Yeah, you were done. And then Cam Newton happened or didn't happen, I guess. Rojo didn't do anything. Josh Jacobs got stopped. Fant didn't do anything. And then, I ended up like 40 points. I might have been 50 points below that 4 p.m. projection.
Yeah, and then even coming into that, I was still losing by a bit. I needed like 20 points or something, and I had Kyler and his kicker combined for like 60 almost. So it put me safely ahead by the end, but I think I needed about 20 or 30 out of the two of them, and they got 60 combined to finish it off.
Yeah, I could have pulled it off because I left almost 40 points on the bench, but I mean, I wasn't starting James Robinson over Josh Jacobs. That wouldn't make any sense.
No, Deontay Johnson maybe.
Yeah, I considered putting him over Slayton, but I mean, the past couple of weeks, you roll him out, he gets hurt. I really didn't want to. I wanted to wait a week on that. So
there's a Thursday boom bust option there.
Yeah, indeed. So that about wraps up our little recap. But yeah, Cam Newton got us in our Dynasty League too, as well as McKinnon.
Well, lost 4 in a row there.
Yeah, you're not gonna
get it back on track.
You're not gonna win a week when you have 2 players get you negative points.
No, not at all.
Hey, did you hear about McKinnon? I know you asked me yesterday what was going on.
No, so he had like 3 carries for -1 yard or something.
Shanahan came out later and said that he was resting him. He said because of the recent injuries in the past couple of years and his heavy workload so far this year, he wanted to rest him.
Like that, be active, but not necessarily.
Yeah, more of an emergency guy, I guess. Yeah, it would have been nice to know that ahead of time.
Yeah, and I mean, a couple of other guys looked like good starts. We actually had to, I don't know if you looked, we were in such bad running back shape. We started Jeff Wilson and Hasty in a different Dynasty League.
That worked out well.
Yeah, somehow.
Oh, man. Yeah, what a mess. What a mess. But we have got some San Francisco running backs we'll talk about a little bit later. You ready to jump into the waivers here?
Yeah, let's take a look at that quarterback position here first. So we've got a couple of interesting options, probably mostly streamers, but all these guys are owned in less than 50% of leagues. One guy that I've been looking at for the past week or two is I have a couple leagues where I'm kind of juggling quarterbacks, and the one that we talked about earlier, Kyler's going on bye this week. Derek Carr, 29% owned, is in Cleveland this week. What are your thoughts there?
I like it. I mean, Carr's looked good this year. He's, I don't know about the majority, but my threshold for quarterbacks is usually like 20 points. If you can't give me at least 20 points, then I'm not considering you. And he's been above that mark most of the season. His first game against Carolina, he was down to like 15. But other than that, he's been good. And he's had some tough opponents too. He put up solid numbers against Buffalo, KC, New England, Tampa Bay. He got 23. That's a good defense. So I would expect him to be able to tear up Cleveland. Now, the only worry that you have is it ends up being like this Josh Jacobs show or something like that, which with Gruden is always a possibility. But yeah, and I need a streamer, I have absolutely no issue with Derek Carr. How about you?
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. There's a couple of quarterbacks that are out there in our league here that we're talking about. And Derek Carr is one of them. I actually picked him up last week, leading into the week, but I, needed the roster spot for another position, though. Had to cut bait with him. So it'd be nice to have him already rostered here. But there's a few quarterbacks, as I mentioned, available there. But Carr is probably one of my prime targets as a bye replacement this week. And as well as our next quarterback here, Teddy Bridgewater. 44% owned, so a little closer to that halfway mark, but he's got Atlanta on the road this week.
Yeah, he's the one. If I'm picking between the two, or any of your general streamers, Teddy's going to be the one that I want. I've talked about plenty. I love that Atlanta matchup that we're getting. Now, I will say his floor does seem to be a little bit lower than Carr's. He's had some like sub 10-point weeks this year. Just a couple weeks ago, they played Chicago. He didn't do very well. And I forget the one earlier in the year, but he didn't do very well then either. So his floor is lower, but I think his upside's higher. That offense is rolling in Carolina. It's just the defense sucks. So, yeah, he's a pretty good option. And against Atlanta, he should be fine. So I like Bridgewater more, but like you said, his ownership's a little bit higher too. So he's going to be tougher to get your hands on. What do you think about Teddy?
Yeah, I mean, I love the matchup, but as you mentioned, it could be a little more volatile. And from what I saw, I do believe that Christian McCaffrey is going to be back, at least practicing this week. So maybe they bring him back and they try to ease him in, and he gets some carries. Mike Davis gets his allotment, and depending on how the game works, it could be a situation where both of those guys, see kind of their most joint carries, this season, and then after this week, CMC takes back over. So worry that maybe that eats into it a bit. But if everyone's healthy in Atlanta, they're going to be able to put up points. So I mean, it's a nice option if he's available. I think, as we mentioned, he's available in a lot less leagues. But yeah, I mean, I probably myself lean a little more on the Derek Carr side. But this matchup is very, very good, and if Bridgewater's out there, I wouldn't mind playing either of them compared to some of the next guys we're going to talk about here.
Yeah, next one. I mean, to be fair, another great matchup. You got Jimmy Garoppolo up against Seattle. It's just, we're getting more inconsistent as we go along, and the 49ers just won 33-6, and he didn't crack 10 points. So, that's how it rolls in San Francisco sometimes. But the matchup with Seattle, it could be high scoring, and he could rack up the points. Just, do you want to roll the dice or not?
Yeah, I mean, he's only got 3 games this season over 10 points in double digits. I mean, they're all
to be fair, I think the Jets game
there.
Yeah, the Jets game I think he left early, and he didn't crack 20. Yeah. So I mean, to be fair, that could have been a better week.
The Giants or the Eagles, but coming back against Miami, negative. Rams, he looked good, but then this week, only 7.5. So, yeah, it's a little more volatile, and I think I'd have to wait and see how the injuries look for that team, because there's a lot of uncertainty with Debo also hurt as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a tough situation. 2 other guys we got our eyes on. We got Rivers against Detroit and Mayfield against Vegas. What do you think of those two?
Yeah, both are interesting. Rivers, I think maybe a little less because I think the defense that he has behind him is going to be able to maybe slow down Stafford in Detroit a little bit more. We're all hoping Stafford and the Lions were going to be able to really get going this week against Atlanta, and they did to a degree, but I think the total was somewhere in the low to mid 20s for the score. So I just think if that's what you can do against Atlanta, now you're going up against Indy. Maybe you can't put up the points, and Rivers doesn't really have to throw too much. So I think I'd rather play Baker here. Hoping that the Baker and Carr game could be a little closer, and possibly having both, having to run the ball and pass the ball, because they could both run the ball well, maybe open up some play action, but not really thrilled about playing Baker or Philip Rivers.
Yeah, same. I don't want to play either. I'm with you. I'd rather play Baker. I think they probably got similar floors, but Baker has higher upside. Losing OBJ is going to hurt, but we've seen him been fine without OBJ before. So, yeah, that's
and he did look great this week. I mean, we have to say that. He had almost 40 points in our league scoring here. 300 yards, 5 passing touchdowns will do it, interception. But I think, I was reading that he actually ends up playing better without Odell. And obviously, you're always going to want Odell on the field. He's a talented player. But it could be a thing where he doesn't feel like he has to hit a certain number of targets to Beckham, and he can kind of just spread the ball around more. So be interested to see how he plays this week.
Yeah, you see that sometimes, not as much in football, but in a lot of other sports. Sometimes you get rid of your big superstar and the dynamic of the team changes and it works out. So yeah, we'll have to wait and see. But moving on to the running backs, one we have been talking about, I think every week, that has now been catapulted to the top is Chase Edmonds. Still 63% owned on a bye, but looks like Drake's going to the IR.
Yeah, that's what they're saying. Now, I just saw something recently that said Drake to miss multiple weeks, but not necessarily definitely going to be a season ender. So definitely, there's a lot of at play here because Edmonds is the guy the rest of the year. You're bidding, almost everything on him with that offense and the way he's already been playing in that offense as a receiving back. Now he's owned in, more than half of leagues, and he is coming on the bye. So you're picking up somebody that you're not going to be able to play this week with, 2 more weeks of uncertain news, whether it be, Drake ends up looking better than the initial injury. Maybe they bring somebody in over the bye week. So there's a lot to think about here. I still really want to get him, right? I have him on a dynasty league that, I've been holding on to him for just the chance that he gets to take over for Drake. But I'm just not exactly sure, I mean, I guess I do know you're betting a lot on him, but you're taking on a lot of uncertain risk, with the bye week coming up here. What do you think?
Yeah, I'd be happy to grab him because, I lose out on this week, but I'll gain probably 2 more. I mean, if they're talking IR, they're thinking 3-week injury. Mm-hmm. So yeah, unless something changes with the diagnosis, then, you should get some movement out of him. I also wouldn't be opposed to grabbing him and then trying to trade him away. Somebody that really needs running back help and, wants to buy into that hype given the injury just happened. Maybe the Drake owner, who knows what you can get. So I wouldn't be opposed to that. But yeah, he's going to go for, this is one of your situations where he's going to go for 40, 50% of your budget, even if it is just 3 weeks. Could be a lot longer too.
Yeah. I mean, he's definitely the top pickup of the week. There's a couple of other guys that are going to be filling in for injuries here, but he's the one that you're spending up on. And you're probably going to have to spend over 30% of your budget at this point if he's unrostered, given that he's already owned in 63% of leagues. There's not too many people that are going to have that opportunity to bid on him, but the high ownership may even make people want to bid even more, thinking, wow, other people who are already on the ball with him, I gotta get this guy. So it is a little risky.
Yeah, speaking of risky, we'll lump on the next 2. We got Jeff Wilson Jr. and Jamaica Hasty in San Francisco. Wilson 6% owned, Hasty 21% owned. Both got Seattle, so great matchup. What are you doing there?
Yeah, so I don't know. I mean, do we have any definitive Wilson news on what the injury's looking like? Yeah, I'm not positive. I think with that, I would put in, average bids on Wilson, Hasty, and even maybe Tevin Coleman, who should be back this week. I'd maybe throw in a bid on each of them, about $5 to $10 each and see which one I get, just because I don't know what, Wilson's probably got the, one of the most upside. You got to say Coleman probably has some upside as well. Hasty, I probably bid the least on just because he's a younger back and they probably don't want to rely on him. He's going to be more of a contingent guy. So I'm just not exactly sure where I want to go there, but I'm probably bidding on all of them. Not a ton though, just especially with Wilson with the injury that he sustained. It sounds like it may be an ankle from what I'm hearing.
Yeah, I'm more on the opposite end. I'm not bidding on any of them, to be honest. And it really comes down to everything that you had said. So we don't know Wilson's injury. Coleman could be back this week. So, and then what we said at the top of the show, we had McKinnon just getting kind of a rest week. So you're looking next week where you could have Wilson playing, Coleman playing, Hasty playing, and McKinnon. So you pick up somebody, you get Jeff Wilson, you just start him with all 4 of them guys. Sure, he can get touchdowns because he's Jeff Wilson, but that could be it. You're going to play McKinnon or Coleman on his first week back? Absolutely not. You can't trust anyone. And then even if somebody comes out, like next week will come out and it's Coleman, and Coleman's the guy. The following week, I still don't think you're going to have enough confidence in Coleman after one game back with the way San Francisco runs the backfield to trust to put him back in there. And then after that, you're looking at Mostert coming back. What's that going to look like? Then you got a bye week 11. So like, I just don't see a world where, unless I'm in like a desperate play, that I'm playing any of these people because you can't trust any of them.
Yeah, I think that's what it is. That's why I'm not spending a ton because I'm not playing them this week. I'd be okay, spending somewhere between 5 and 10 on each of them, and if whichever one you get, hopefully that's the lottery ticket that pops here. But you also, are going to think in the back of your head, most of it will be back likely in a few weeks as well. So it's just really hard to tell, and not really thrilled to spend a lot on any of them.
Yep, absolutely. Two more guys, Will, that are impacted by injuries. Carlos Hyde in Seattle, 11% owned. We had Carson go down. I believe he's week to week now. Then Wayne Gallman, 2% owned, gets Tampa Bay. We had Freeman go down with an ankle injury. Either of those two interest you?
Hyde more than Gallman. I mean, Gallman got the carries, but it didn't look particularly great with it. I think he got in the end zone once, but not thrilled about it. And we'll see. I haven't heard any super serious news about Gallman yet. Or I'm sorry, about Freeman yet. So I don't know how long that would be, but I imagine it would be more of a Gallman and Lewis thing. Carlos Hyde, I wouldn't mind bidding on. He's someone I think that I probably would spend the second most out of the guys here outside of Edmonds. We'll see how the Carson injury looks, but I imagine that Hyde is going to be it'll be him and I think Travis Homer. Hyde's going to be the guy that you're looking at touchdowns. He'll be your goal line back, and he had a nice 30 or 40 yard run in this game as well. So he looks fast. He looked good. He's a guy that I wouldn't mind picking up, and I know San Francisco's defense, is hurt, but they're still pretty talented. So not a great matchup, but I think a good enough matchup and for the offense that he's got there.
Yeah, I really have nothing else to add there. It's pretty much my thought process as well. Two other guys I'm going to lump together, and there's kind of a reason for it. Is P. Ryan with the Jets, 16% owned against Kansas City, and then Gus Edwards for Baltimore, 8% owned versus Pittsburgh. I see them both as just touchdown dependent guys. While P. Ryan's getting the majority of carries for his team, and Edwards won't be when Ingram's fully healthy. You're asking for a touchdown. Like P. Ryan didn't do anything. His fantasy season was saved, or fantasy week was saved because he got a touchdown. But are you going to rely on a touchdown for the Jets? Or are you going to rely on one for the Baltimore Ravens? Like, I'll take my bet on the Ravens. I'd rather add Edwards between those two, even with a tough matchup against Pittsburgh. I don't know if I want to start him, but between the two, P. Ryan's going to get more carries and have more opportunity, but the offense is so bad. I just don't want to rely on that touchdown. So between the two, I'll take a shot on Gus Edwards, and honestly, I wouldn't even bid that much on him. Probably 5, 6, 7. As long as there's not a big recovery for Ingram, I guess. How about you? What do you think of those two?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to play either of them this year. With Gus, I think he's a guy that you may be able to get, close to free. You may be able to throw just $2-3 on him and just have him on your bench to see what happens this week. Maybe Ingram doesn't play, Gus comes out, looks good, and they can move forward with him. Maybe not. We'll see. He's a guy that I want to pick up for a very little amount and just kind of see what happens. P. Ryan got the carries, but the matchup, this could be the biggest point spread of the whole entire season, right? The Jets at Kansas City. That's got to be. I'm eager to see what that point spread is, because that's going to be probably one of the biggest underdogs of the entire season with the Jets playing in Kansas City.
Yeah, I saw that spread earlier, and I forget what it was, but yeah, it was outrageous. It was like 20-some points or something.
Yeah, I'm just not thrilled. I know Ty Johnson's there as well in New York, so he'll probably get a lot of the targets on the very likely passing downs that they're going to need to have a lot of. So I'm not spending more than 5 on either, and P. Ryan's going to go for more than that. But Gus, I think you could probably get with a $2-3 bid. If people overlook him, people are just pulling up, who did well in week 7? He's not there because you don't buy. You may be able to sneak and get him for free.
How about Zach Moss? What do you think about him?
It's interesting. He played well. His stat line looked good. He didn't have a ton of carries, but Singletary I think only had one carry or just very limited touches. Well, Moss had 7 carries for 47 yards, so great numbers, almost 7 a carry, and then 3 catches on 3 targets for 25 yards. And maybe they're slowly working him in, but he's a guy that I also in PPR had 8.5 points. So maybe someone looks at that and says, we'll bid something on it. But right around 70 yards, 10 touches. That's something that I wouldn't mind spending $5, $6, $7 just to kind of see what happens there. In all likelihood, this is a split backfield that you're not going to want to play much. So I'm not starting him this week. But maybe they come out here this week against New England and Zach Moss looks much better than Singletary. And this is the start of him taking over the backfield. Who knows?
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I think I'd be willing to bid a little bit more. I think I'd be willing to go up to like 10, 11% or so to secure him because he's the potential to be a starting running back if he does secure that job. I do want to throw a little bit of hesitation on that because he had a good game, but it was also against Jets. A lot of people could have a good game against the Jets. And he's got New England up next, so not the easiest matchup. But if he looks good against New England, that's a pretty big deal. So I'll be willing to spend up for Moss a little bit. I'm not starting him yet. He needs to prove it to me first, but he's a interesting ad at the running back position.
Like him as a speculative ad to just kind of see what happens this week. You're not going to start him, but I think that he's got some good upside.
Yep, absolutely. So moving on to wide receivers, you got Mr. Antonio Brown, already 78% owned against the Giants.
Yeah, so that was surprising to me when I was putting the doc together here. That was I couldn't find him anywhere at first, so I just wrote him down, knew they were playing the Giants. And then I went to look his name up, 78% owned, so people have been holding.
Yeah, so I guess he's not available for the majority of people out there. If he is, I'm assuming your league's just not that deep. I mean, you could take a shot on him. I mean, it's definitely a crowded wide receiver core there. There's a lot of good options. It's more of a defensive led team, but he might end up being like your boom bust kind of guy if he catches a bomb touchdown and he's good, and then if not, then he's not as valuable. But I'm not starting him. That's for sure. You need to see it from him first. He's got to learn the offense. He hasn't played in a long time, so he's definitely just kind of a bench stash. But he's worth owning, I guess, if you have a burner spot to plan him down in. What do you think?
Yeah, I imagine if he got through, it's going to be one of two things. People, just aren't interested in him, and you're going to be able to get him for $5 or $10, or people didn't realize it and now they're going to bid up and someone's going to be spending $20, $30 on Antonio Brown. So with just the amount of weapons there, if I can get him, 10, maybe 15, but even then you're hoping that he comes in and basically just completely ruins Mike Evans' value and dampens everybody else's, because there's just no way that they're going to sustain all of these weapons. So I'm not really interested. 78% owned. Most people probably aren't going to be seeing him there anyway.
Yeah. Next, I'm going to lump these two together because I don't think they're being started that much. But we got Nelson Aguilar and Cole Beasley, 4%, 41% owned respectively, but been tearing it up lately. I'm sure you're interested in both.
Yeah, I mean, I had Beasley in our league that we played each other, and I had to cut him just like I had to cut Derek Carr. But yeah, he played well again, man. Half-point PPR for us. He, has been double digits all but 3 times, and he was, at 8 or above every game this year. Ranging between 8 and 16. So you're probably not going to get a 20-point game, but he's going to get a few catches. And this week, 12 targets, 11 catches, 112 yards. I mean, sign me up, especially with bye weeks here. I'm all about him. Aguilar, he's your boom bust. He's like the exact opposite, right? So if you have some safer guys, right, and want some more upside, Aguilar is all that and more. I mean, he's had a couple of low games, but last week here, 9 targets, only 5 catches, but 107 and a touchdown. He's going to be the guy that's getting you those deep balls. So I'm, interested in either, but in both of them, not going to spend a ton. I'd probably not spending over 10 on either of them. Because I don't think they're going to be super game changing, but they could really give you some nice depth.
Yeah, they're both, I guess more so Aguilar, very touchdown dependent. Like Aguilar's had 3 good weeks in a row, 12 points, 13 points, 19 points, and a half point PPR. Got touchdowns at each of those weeks too.
Yeah.
His week where he got 12.4 in the R format, half point PPR. He only had 44 yards and 4 catches. So you take that touchdown away, it wasn't the greatest. And the Raiders offense isn't bad, but it's not one that I really want to bank on a touchdown in. Especially when it wants to run the ball as much as they do. So he's a good ad. I think his ownership should definitely be above 4%. Not a bad start, especially this week against Cleveland. That's a good, that's a nice matchup. And same with Beasley. Beasley's going to get a lot of usage against New England. So I'm with you. I'd be willing to own both of them. I'm not going to bid the most for them, but they're good plugs, especially during the bye week, like you said.
Yeah, a couple of other guys here I'll just kind of run through quickly on the wide receiver list. Sterling Shepard, 29% owns, got Tampa. He was the guy that was really targeted, but doesn't throw, makes him not huge on that offense. Curtis Samuel, somewhat interesting. He was used a good bit, and I think he had over 10 points in our league scoring format, but still probably the third fiddle.
He's a guy that if you look at his box score, he gets somewhere between 6 and 8 points every week. And then if he gets a touchdown, he's fantasy relevant that week. And if he doesn't, then it's 6 or 7 points, and it's So yeah, he's okay.
Yeah, who knows? And then you got Higgins, Rashard Higgins, and Donovan Peoples-Jones, both I think had over 10 points, and should get a boost with Odell done for the year. Not sure which of them is going to be the guy though.
Yeah, that's the interesting bet. I would probably go with Higgins, just because he's been with Baker for a while now. We've seen some big games from him in the past, and there's just a familiarity there where Peoples-Jones, he's the rookie. He hasn't really done a lot this year. He caught the touchdown this week, and he could be the breakout guy, but I'm going to place my bet on the guy that I've already seen and I know has chemistry with Baker.
The only other one I'll say here, Randall Cobb had a pretty good game. He 10 targets, 8 catches, 95 yards. He is on bye this week, so someone, if maybe toward the end of the week you have an open roster spot and he's still available because no one picked him up because of the bye week, could be a guy maybe you stash because the Houston does have a pretty solid schedule when it comes to defenses they're going against here for the next few weeks. But ready to move on to tight ends?
Yeah, let's do it. We had the big breakout one of the week. Bryant over there in Cleveland, only 1% owned, gets a Vegas. Do you have any interest in him?
Yeah, I think if you need a tight end, you can get him for the next probably 1 or 2 weeks. I don't think Hooper's injury is major, so I imagine this is only 1 or 2 week rental. So I'm probably not paying a ton, and the way he performed, I imagine he may go for over 10. I'm probably not going to try to spend more than 9 or 10 on a tight end I'm only expecting to have for 2 weeks, but he's someone I wouldn't mind plugging and playing here in the next 2 weeks.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. He's a plug-in. If you need a tight end to get you through for a little bit, he's fine. I was kind of surprised to see him get the start over Njoku, but that's where we're at right now.
Yeah.
And, like we just said with Higgins and Peoples-Jones, a hole has been created with OBJ going, and that's going to open some things up for him, and maybe it's just a touchdown roll, but that's all it takes, as we saw this week. So he's not a bad ad. I don't know what I would bid on him. If I'm streaming tight ends, he buys you maybe 2 weeks, I'd probably go 10% there just to get myself 2 weeks. But I don't see him as a long-term guy.
I will say he does have Vegas this week and then the bye week 9. So if it is only a 2 week injury for Hooper, you may only be getting
you only get him for 1 week. Yeah, that's tough then.
So take note in that. I mean, maybe he gets some more weeks after the bye, but you're picking somebody up. So I'm not bidding too much on a player for 1 week and then their bye. So take that for what it is. See what you guys need.
Fair. Next up, another guy who's been on this doc week after week, Logan Thomas in Washington, 26% owned, but he is on the bye this week. What do you think about Thomas?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not I'm not bidding on him. Once again, if you have IR spots and you get close to the weekend and he's still available, a couple of your guys going IR, you can pick him up as a decent ad because he's played well throughout the year. Another 14 points this week on the bye, but got the Giants and the Lions coming up after that. So not a bad guy to run. I mean, he's probably someone that you can start in most matchups as just kind of a dart throw tight end, like most of them are. But I'm not spending much on his buy.
See, I'm a little bit on the opposite. I think, not that I'm going to spend a lot, but it's one of the situations where I'd be willing to roster 2 tight ends. Because you could kind of, with him, predict his games a little bit. Like he did good against Dallas because Dallas defense sucks. He did good against Washington or the Giants because their defense sucks. But the Rams held him down. Baltimore held him down. Cleveland held him down. So no surprise. But like you said, you get out of the bye. You have the Giants. You have the Lions. You have Cincinnati. You have Dallas. So that's 4 matchups I'd be willing to start him in. Pittsburgh, tough. San Francisco, tough. But then playoff week, you get Seattle and Carolina. Like great matchups. So if you're streaming, it looks like a long-term solution here. So he's interesting.
Yeah, no, he definitely is. I mean, we'll see. I like him when he comes out of the bye, but like you said, you have to be and have the ability to roster multiple tight ends there. I'd say a couple other tight ends here. 2 Eagles tight ends, Richard Rodgers, probably for the short term, and Dallas Goedert for the long term. Richard Rodgers played well, and the Eagles clearly want to highlight and showcase the tight end in the offense. So I think then this week here, they have one more game before the bye week. So you could be picking him up for just kind of a 1-week start. I do anticipate Goddard probably coming back after the bye. And if he does, I think he's going to be a guy that you can fire up as long as he's healthy and start on almost any matchup the rest of the year.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you. I'd be okay playing Rodgers this week. After this week, it's probably the Goddard show. I mean, they do in Philly roll out 2 tight ends. They've done it plenty with Ertz and Goddard. They could definitely do it here. They got the injuries to require something like that, but I don't know if Richard Rodgers in a tight end 2 role is something that I'm terribly interested in. So yeah, it's pretty much this week or bust for me.
Yeah, you get him here, you start him if you need a spot start, and it's pretty much 1 week start unless we get word that Goddard, has a setback and is going to miss more time.
Yep, absolutely. Final tight end, Albert O. Had a really good week. Looks like Locke was relying on him. Ownership at 0%, so I guess less than 1. He's got the Chargers. Any interest there, really?
Oh, you mean Albert Akwugbanan?
Aren't you cool? No, it's Albert O.
I do like Albert O. I think, it all depends on Fant. I mean, he probably has some opportunity even with Fant in there, but you're not thrilled because the downside and the floor is so much lower. But if Fant does continue to be out, he's a guy that you can throw in. And the way that Herbert's playing for the Chargers, that's their matchup this week, they're going to have to throw the ball and keep up with him. So I think kind of see what Fant looks like. I'm probably not bidding a ton unless I know, or probably not bidding much substantial unless I know that Noah Fant is going to be out this week before the waivers tomorrow.
Yeah, he's definitely more of a break glass in case of an emergency kind of guy. Fant definitely did not look 100%, but if he played through it this week, I think he could continue to play through it. And I imagine he's going to continue to get a little bit better every week, but it's going to be a long road for him. So I'd be okay starting him this week, maybe as an emergency, but not excited long-term. Well, long-term as in this season. From a dynasty standpoint, he showed chemistry at lock, and that's great, but yeah, he's worrisome.
And then finally here, we've got a couple tight or defensive streamers. There really wasn't much. Most of the defenses that have good matchups are owned much more than 50% of leagues. 2 interesting ones that I found here below 50%. We have the Titans, 27% owned, and they're in Cincinnati. And then the Packers, 19% owned at home for the Vikings.
Yeah, both solid options. I think my instinct was to go with the Titans because I wanted to match up against Cincy, but I think I'm going to go with the Packers. I like a matchup against Minnesota, divisional game, so it could also just end up being real low scoring or something. But I doubt that, given the Minnesota defense. So yeah, I'll go with the Packers. Who do you like more?
Yeah, I like the Titans a little bit more. Both of them are solid. If I really needed a defense, I'm probably maybe bidding $3 on the Titans and then $2 on the Packers right behind them. So hoping I get one. But
awesome. Well, that's going to wrap up today's waiver show. Tune in on Thursday. We go through our start sit questions and look at some trades for week 8. Until then, folks, trust your board.